Comment on the video, where are people watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It was shaping up to be one of those ideal Sunday mornings that make you believe life is inherently beautiful. HOA stood in the front yard, fully absorbed in a peaceful ritual of nurturing a vibrant garden. The early sun broke through the lingering mist, bathing the yard in a warm, golden glow. Every detail felt thoughtfully arranged, the delicate aroma of rich earth mingled with the sweet scent of blooming jasmine, and the gentle hum of nature served as a perfect backdrop to the day's quiet symphony. HOA had dedicated the past several weeks to reviving the garden. With painstaking care, roses that had once drooped forlornly were now regaining their vitality. HOA spent hours deadheading faded blooms, applying just the right measure of fertilizer, and rearranging the supporting stakes for an especially vigorous climber. The garden was not merely a collection of plants. It had become a personal haven where every petal and leaf testified to hard work and the hope of renewal. The rhythmic task of tending to the plants provided a welcome escape from the usual hustle of daily responsibilities. Though HOA was relatively new to the neighborhood, having just settled into the area due to a demanding assignment with a federal bureau, these moments of solitude allowed for introspection and rejuvenation. HOA's focus, as delicate as the care devoted to each blossom, was momentarily consumed by the interplay of natural beauty and personal achievement. The gentle strains of chill-hop music flowed softly through a set of earbuds, enhancing the tranquility that the morning bestowed. Just as HOA knelt down to adjust the support of a particularly exuberant rose climber, the pace of the morning shifted unexpectedly. A beige Buick, moving slowly like a predator surveying its surroundings, emerged from the quiet street. The vehicle idled steadily across the driveway, its engine purring with a subtle menace that sharply contrasted with the serene ambience of the garden. In that precise moment, a presence stirred that would soon shatter the morning's calm. Through the Buick's slightly lowered passenger window, a sharp and unyielding voice cut through the tranquil air, a voice that belonged unmistakably to Karen. Known for her brash demeanor and uncompromising sense of entitlement, Karen's tone was as piercing as if it had been honed to break through any calm. Her demand was abrupt and startling. She insisted that the garage door be opened, despite there being no prior arrangement or acquaintance to suggest any obligation on HOA's part. For a moment, HOA paused, startled by the intrusion into what had been an undisturbed sanctuary. The intrusion of Karen and her aggressive request created an immediate dissonance with the normally forgiving pace of the day. Even as questions fluttered in HOA's mind about this unexpected visitor's motivations, the previously untainted morning began to show ominous signs of disruption. In that reflective moment, as HOA slowly rose from the delicate task of tending to the roses, a sense of foreboding mingled with disappointment. The peaceful scene that had been painted so meticulously with natural hues and soothing sounds was now inextricably altered by Karen's unwelcome presence. What began as a day dedicated to quiet beauty was now poised on the brink of a confrontation that neither HOA nor the tranquil neighborhood had ever anticipated. HOA still knelt among her flourishing roses when the disturbance from the beige Buick deepened. Karen's shrill demand cut through the gentle hum of chill-hop music that had been soothing the morning. "Open the garage door now," Karen bellowed, leaning precariously out of the vehicle's window. Her presence, abrupt and unwelcome, sent ripples through the peaceful scene. Rising slowly, HOA wiped dirt from her hands and adjusted the support of the now-forgotten rose climber. With measured calm, she addressed Karen, "I'm sorry, but I don't work here. I live on the property and am simply tending my garden." Her tone was even yet tinged with an incredulous softness. She hadn't expected to be thrust into an argument on what began as a serene Sunday. Karen's eyes narrowed as she glowered at HOA. "Don't play dumb with me, girl." "I know what I saw," she snapped, her voice cutting harshly against the still air. To an outsider, the glaring contrast between HOA's composed demeanor and Karen's abrasive hostility was striking. Every word Karen spat carried an edge of entitlement and a disturbing hint of prejudice that instantly raised HOA's guard. HOA took a moment to steady herself. Deep in thought, she wondered how a simple request about a garage door could escalate into such a personal and hostile confrontation. Despite the shock, HOA's training and experience whispered a reminder to remain collected. "I'm not sure what you're implying," but please understand, I'm just taking care of my garden, she repeated, trying to defuse the tension with rational clarity. Karen's response was immediate and derisive. I saw you, HOA. I know you're not who you say you are, she insisted, her voice rising in volume. In that instant, the hostile undertones became unmistakable. HOA's skin prickled with the sting of racism, a bitter reminder that no matter how peaceful one's intentions, ignorance and prejudice could upend an otherwise ordinary day. Inside her own mind, HOA debated her next move. She could either allow Karen's irrational fury to dictate the conversation or document every moment to protect herself. Deciding on the latter, HOA slowly retrieved her phone and began recording the unfolding drama. Go ahead and call the police, if that's what you want, she stated softly, her voice a mixture of resolve and disappointment. As Karen fumbled with her phone, her hands visibly shaking from anger, the tension in the air thickened. The immaculate garden, once a sanctuary of beauty and calm, now served as a stage for a confrontation that no one had anticipated. With every second, the situation edged closer to becoming a public spectacle. HOA's steady eyes never wavered as she continued her slow, cautious movements towards the house. The gentle chirping of the birds and the rustle of the leaves now played a conflicted background tune, a reminder of nature's resilience in the face of human discord. Although HOA's focus remained on doing what she needed to maintain her beloved garden, the wrenching intrusion of Karen's harsh demands cut deeply into the morning's quiet joy. The confrontation had grown from a minor disturbance to an outright display of hostility. As HOA moved toward her front door, Karen's anger escalated. Her voice took on an even harsher cadence that betrayed more than frustration, it revealed deep-seated prejudice. Don't you lie to me, HOA, Karen snarled, misusing the term kind as an insult, you're definitely up to something, and I won't let you ignore me. HOA paused, her posture firm yet graceful. The garden, once a canvas of tranquility, now seemed to reflect the discord of the moment. With clear precision, HOA said, I live on this property. I take care of my roses and tend to my space every day. I have no obligation to open your garage door. Her words, calm and deliberate, were intended to diffuse the absurdity of Karen's baseless demand. But Karen was unmoved. With every syllable, her tone dripped with disdain. I know what I saw. You're not one of us, she declared, the racist inflection in her voice unmistakable. The very air between them pulsed with tension as HOA's heart pounded against the confines of her ribs. In that moment, the gentle art of gardening and the peaceful rhythm of nature were at odds with a raw display of bigotry. HOA's eyes, reflecting both sorrow and steely determination, met Karen's. I'm not your property servant, and I won't be bullied into something against my will, she stated firmly. Every word was measured, a testament to years of learning not to let injustice go unanswered. Yet, deep inside, the sting of those words, laden with bitterness and prejudice, cut sharper than the chill in the morning air. With a resigned sigh, Karen scoffed, her contempt evident as she waved her phone in the air. I'm calling the police, and you'll be sorry, she threatened, her voice rising to a crescendo that echoed along the quiet street. HOA, meanwhile, maintained her composure, her determination evident in her steady, unwavering gaze. The decision to record the encounter had already been made, now was the time to ensure nothing was left undocumented. As Karen's trembling fingers began dialing 911, HOA's mind raced through the possibilities. She knew that in this skewed moment, her every action would be scrutinized. She needed to maintain both her dignity and her safety. Amid the chaos, the contrasting images of a meticulously tended garden and a discordant human conflict merged into one unsettling tableau. HOA, recording every word with an air of detached resolve, finally said, I'm simply doing my job, taking care of what's mine. I expect you to respect that. Her voice was unwavering even as Karen continued her tirade, blithely unaware of the power of documented truth. In that charged silence, the only certainty was that the events of this morning would reverberate far beyond the confines of a single front yard, exposing not only personal injustice but also a broader systemic prejudice. The garden, now an unwilling witness to this clash, swayed softly in the breeze, a poignant reminder that even beauty can be marred by the ugliness of prejudice. The escalating commotion did not go unnoticed for long. Within minutes of Karen's furious outburst and the frenzied dialing of 911, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, echoing through the residential street. The once serene garden, with its vibrant roses and gently swaying climbers, now became the unexpected stage for an unfolding confrontation between a determined homeowner and an irate neighbor fueled by unfounded animosity. At first, HOA watched from a measured distance as the approaching police cruisers cast intermittent blue and red lights on the manicured lawn. The soft hum of nature, the rustling leaves and the chirping birds, contrasted starkly with the mechanical noise and urgency of the sirens. HOA's instincts had taken over long before the arrival of law enforcement. Recording the event on her phone and checking the feeds on her security cameras, she silently logged every detail. Karen, still perched in the driver's seat of her aging beige Buick, continued her tirade with alarming vehemence. Her face, creased by anger and perhaps aided by an archaic sense of entitlement, contorted into grim expressions every time she shouted out her demands. "You're trespassing on my property," she declared repeatedly, her voice laden with both fear and aggression. Each proclamation was punctuated by a dismissive gesture, as if forcing her words into some unyielding truth. When the police vehicles finally pulled up at the curb, two officers stepped out with a combination of caution and authority. One was a younger man with earnest eyes, while the other, a woman, maintained a stern, observant expression as she took in the unfolding scene. Their footsteps crunched on the gravel as they approached the Buick and then turned their attention to HOA, whose calm yet assertive composure provided an immediate counterpoint to Karen's erratic behavior. "Ma'am, we've received a report of a disturbance. Can you explain what's happening here?" the male officer asked politely yet firmly. It was a question that cut through the tension like a clarion call for order amid chaos. Karen instantly redirected her aggression, pointing a shaking finger toward HOA. "That woman is trespassing. She refuses to open the garage door, and she's acting threatening," she insisted, her voice rising even further. The female officer exchanged a brief glance with her partner before directing her focus toward HOA. "Ma'am, can you tell us your side of the story?" she requested calmly, her tone firm yet empathetic. HOA took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I live here," she explained, gesturing subtly toward the rows of carefully nurtured roses and the charming architectural details of her home. "I'm tending my garden, and I have every right to be here. I'm not employed by Karen, nor do I owe her any service. The only thing I'm doing is caring for what is mine." It was then that the atmosphere shifted subtly. Recognizing the absurdity and pettiness of Karen's claims, HOA decided to reveal more of the situation by showing the video evidence on her phone. With deliberate calm, she flipped her camera toward Karen, capturing the aggressive gesture and the hostile tone. "You have a right to a peaceful morning," HOA said softly, her voice rich with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "And I have the right to document this incident." As the officers examined the evidence, Karen's demeanor began to crumble. Her earlier defiance was now interlaced with a defensive bitterness as the truth of the recorded events became undeniable. Meanwhile, HOA maintained a dignified silence, watching as the responsibility for mediating the incident shifted to the law enforcement officers. The male officer continued his investigation, cross-referencing details on his notepad, while the female officer sought additional clarification from Karen. "Ma'am, please step out of the vehicle so we can assess the situation more closely," she requested. Karen's face reddened with anger, yet the growing professionalism of the scene left little space for further outbursts. HOA, silently and steadily, retracted her camera as the situation began its slow descent toward resolution. The delicate balance between order and chaos had shifted under the weight of undeniable evidence and clear, objective observation. In this charged moment, the peaceful garden, once an emblem of tranquility, stood witness to the collision of human prejudice and the enduring call for justice. Inside the modest entryway of her home, HOA found herself in the midst of a rapidly unfolding investigation. The police officers, having calmed the situation outside, began to document the incident in detail. As the commotion died down outside the garden, a palpable tension lingered in the air, a mixture of indignation, disbelief, and a quiet determination to set matters right. HOA remained composed as the female officer, clipboard in hand, requested further specifics. "Could you please describe exactly what happened?" she inquired, her tone professional yet understanding. With clarity born from the necessity of defending her rights, HOA recounted the morning's events. She explained how Karen's abrupt demand to open the garage door had evolved into an aggressive confrontation that exposed the underlying currents of racism. During her statement, HOA reiterated that she had only been engaged in tending to her beloved roses, a routine that had long provided her solace. She also mentioned that, as the situation escalated, she began recording the encounter to ensure her side of the story would not be lost amid unfounded accusations. The officer nodded in acknowledgement, her eyes softening just slightly as she noted the presence of video evidence on HOA's phone. Outside, the evidence mounted. The police discovered that Karen's vehicle registration had been expired for several years, and further checks suggested that her driver's license was suspended, a fact that added another layer to the incident. The officers' initial confusion gradually transformed into disbelief as they pieced together the narrative, one of a routine morning transmuted by an irrational demand and fueled by deep-seated prejudice. HOA watched silently as the male officer approached a security camera mounted inconspicuously near her garage. He verified that the camera had recorded not only Karen's hostile outburst but also every moment that had followed. With each check, the evidence began to paint a clear picture, a picture that directly contradicted Karen's claims. Even as Karen continued to fume inside her vehicle, her voice barely audible now above the steady hum of police conversation, it was clear that her credibility was diminishing by the minute. As the investigation progressed, the female officer politely but firmly requested that Karen step out of the vehicle so that identification could be checked. The sight of this request seemed to break the last vestiges of Karen's defiant facade. After a brief, turbulent struggle, Karen reluctantly exited her car. The officers began running her information through their systems, and it quickly emerged that the long-standing complaints lodged by neighbors were not isolated incidents. Conversations about previous altercations with others, now corroborated by security footage similar to HOA's recordings, only deepened the gravity of the situation. HOA felt an odd mix of vindication and sorrow. Vindication, because the evidence supported everything she had witnessed; sorrow, because the incident had laid bare the ugly reality of prejudice that still persisted in the community. The police, now firmly in control, assured HOA that a full report would be compiled and that appropriate actions would be taken in accordance with department policy. Throughout the process, HOA remained a pillar of quiet resolve. Her measured tone and factual recounting served as a stark counterpoint to the chaotic behavior exhibited by Karen. As she signed the official statement and handed over her video evidence, HOA's thoughts drifted briefly to the many mornings spent in her garden. The beauty of those days, however, had been tarnished by an encounter that should never have occurred. The entire incident, meticulously documented by HOA and witnessed by impartial officers, now formed part of a growing record of misconduct by individuals like Karen. While the officers promised to handle the matter with the utmost seriousness, HOA couldn't help but reflect on the emotional toll of having to defend something as simple and pure as the right to enjoy one's property. In that quiet entryway, once a passage to a cherished garden, HOA now faced the harsh reality of a world where innocence was too often marred by entrenched bias and irrational hostility. In the hours following the confrontation, as the matter was formally taken over by local law enforcement, a flurry of bureaucratic activity ensued at the Maplewood Gardens precinct. The officers began drafting their reports, carefully noting every detail of the encounter between HOA and Karen. Meanwhile, HOA was invited to remain at the scene to give her full account to the investigating officers, who were determined to uncover the full scope of the incident. The female officer, now the lead on the case, maintained a calm yet assertive stance as she systematically collected evidence. She reviewed the video footage from both HOA's phone and the security camera mounted near the garage, confirming the chain of events that had transpired in the front yard. With every playback of the recording, the narrative of the day grew clearer, painting a picture of deliberate hostility contrasted against HOA's quiet dignity. The officer's experienced eyes noted every nuance, the slight shake in Karen's voice, the deliberate calm in HOA's responses, and the underlying urgency in the sound of sirens drawing closer. As the investigation unfolded, it became evident that the incident was symptomatic of broader issues within the neighborhood. Senior officers, now alerted to the potential for recurring disturbances, began reviewing past complaints associated with Karen. The results were disconcerting. Multiple reports described Karen as having a history of confrontations with neighbors over trivial matters, each instance laced with vitriolic language and unsubstantiated claims of trespassing. This pattern of behavior lent further credence to HOA's account of the morning, a routine day turned sour by bigotry and entitlement. Within the precinct, a special session was convened to discuss the incident. The discussion was marked by a rare unanimity among the officers. The conduct displayed by Karen not only violated basic community standards but also ignited deeply rooted prejudices that were all too common in local disputes. Senior supervisors, recognizing the importance of leading by example, vowed to take decisive action. They agreed that the evidence gathered from the scene, especially the video recordings, would serve as the cornerstone of their investigation. Additionally, they planned to contact higher authorities to ensure that proper disciplinary measures were taken if similar incidents resurfaced in the future. Throughout this intense review process, HOA was treated with the utmost respect and reassurance. The investigators carefully explained that their primary goal was to ensure that justice was served fairly and transparently. HOA's calm, factual recounting of the events helped fortify their resolve to pursue all appropriate channels of accountability. In a quiet moment away from the bustle of activity, one of the senior investigators confided to HOA, "Your diligence in preserving the truth today reinforces our commitment to serving this community. It is people like you who remind us why we must stand against injustice." Simultaneously, the local media had begun to pick up on the story. Calls for transparency and public accountability emerged, pressuring the department to expedite its review. The officers, although bound by policy, made every effort to keep the situation from spiraling out of control. Formal statements were prepared, and a press briefing was tentatively scheduled, one that promised to outline the steps taken following the morning's events. Even as the investigation took shape, the personal impact on HOA became increasingly apparent. The emotional toll of being thrust into a public spectacle, where one's dignity was under attack, left a lingering sadness. Yet, amidst that sorrow, there also emerged a fierce determination to see that such instances of prejudice did not go unchallenged. HOA continued to field inquiries from colleagues and neighbors, offering a measured perspective on the day's chaos. A perspective that was rooted in a desire for a community where respect was the common language. By the time the precinct's meeting adjourned, a collective resolve had been forged. The investigation was not only about addressing one incident but also about reaffirming a commitment to civil rights and accountability. As the officers prepared to close their case files for the day, they did so with the understanding that every recorded moment of that fateful morning would serve as a beacon for future conduct within the community, a reminder that the truth, meticulously documented, holds the power to restore both order and dignity. In the days that followed the confrontation at the front yard of the Maplewood Gardens residence, the ripple effects of the incident began to reshape the atmosphere of the community. The evidence, undeniable and meticulously recorded by HOA, had not only exonerated her but had also exposed a disturbing pattern of behavior by Karen. What started as an unfortunate encounter was now evolving into a catalyst for broader change. Local residents, who had previously whispered about strange occurrences or minor disputes, now found their voices amplified by the circulating footage. Community meetings were convened where neighbors expressed both outrage and sorrow over how prejudice could alter the fabric of everyday life. The story of HOA's calm resistance had quickly spread across the neighborhood, prompting many to stand up and demand not only accountability from individuals like Karen but also from the local systems that allowed such behavior to fester. At the Maplewood Gardens precinct, senior officers began a comprehensive review of past altercations involving Karen. Witness statements, previously regarded as isolated nuisances, now coalesced into a disturbing mosaic of recurring misconduct. There were accounts of rude interruptions during local gatherings, aggressive confrontations over parking spots, and even repeated instances where Karen had unjustly called law enforcement to settle personal grievances. The breadth of this behavior painted a vivid picture of a long-standing problem, one that resonated deeply with the community's growing intolerance for prejudice. Throughout this period, HOA was frequently contacted by local residents seeking advice on how to respond to similar confrontations. Often, these discussions occurred in quiet moments at neighborhood gatherings or over friendly visits to local cafes. While HOA's primary focus had always been her cherished garden, a place of solace amidst the storm, she soon realized that her experience could empower others to stand against baseless anger and discrimination. "We must ensure that everyone's rights are respected," she would often say, echoing the sentiments of those who had witnessed the incident firsthand. Amid the growing community support, the local police department worked diligently to finalize their report. A press release was prepared, detailing the events of that eventful morning and outlining the steps the department would take to address the recurring issues of harassment and unsubstantiated police calls. The officers emphasized that their investigation was not merely an administrative procedure but a commitment to safeguarding the dignity of every resident. Within the precinct, a special committee was formed to review policies regarding community calls and response protocols. The goal was not only to improve the efficiency of resolving conflicts but also to reduce the potential for misinterpretation of events driven by prejudice. Senior supervisors held intensive training sessions focused on cultural sensitivity, ensuring that officers were well equipped to handle volatile situations with impartiality and empathy. HOA, despite the stress and unexpected attention, maintained her composure throughout these developments. She continued caring for her garden, finding solace in the gentle rhythm of nature, a stark contrast to the hustle of meetings and media inquiries. Her resolve had become a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the face of personal attack and societal bias, one could choose to respond with integrity and calm. In quiet moments before sunrise, as she watered her roses and rearranged the flower beds, HOA reflected on the transformation that had begun to take shape around her. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior began to be scrutinized not just as an isolated incident but as part of a broader pattern that demanded accountability. Neighbors, emboldened by the support of local advocacy groups and the media's coverage, started to file formal complaints. Community leaders held vigils and public forums, discussing ways to foster a more inclusive and respectful environment. The stark contrast between the beauty of Maplewood Gardens and the ugliness of unchecked prejudice was now a talking point for change. In this charged climate of accountability and reflection, the neighborhood slowly began to reclaim its sense of peace. HOA's recorded testimony, supported by video evidence and unwavering composure, served as a powerful reminder that truth matters. And as meetings turned into action plans, a collective determination emerged to ensure that every voice, regardless of background, was heard and respected, so that incidents like this would never again undermine the unity of the community. After the hectic events unraveled and the investigation settled into its routine course, HOA found a quiet moment of introspection as she returned to her garden. The early hours of the morning, once a sanctuary of calm and nurturing beauty, now carried a heavier meaning. A poignant reminder of the day when prejudice had disrupted not only her peace, but also that of her community. Sitting on the edge of a weathered stone bench, HOA reviewed the incident on her phone one last time. The images and recorded voices were a stark reminder of the confrontation with Karen, each detail a testament to the resilience it takes to stand up against unwarranted aggression. Though the hurtful words and baseless accusations still stung, HOA allowed herself to feel a cautious sense of relief. The evidence was clear, and the truth had been upheld. In the days that followed, the media's attention began to fade as new stories emerged and the community slowly returned to its daily rhythms. Yet the impact of that morning lingered in subtle ways. Neighbors who had once exchanged polite greetings now greeted each other with a nod of shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement that everyone had a role to play in creating a respectful environment. Support messages came in small packets, emails, handwritten notes, and even casual conversations at the local market, reminding HOA that her courage had sparked something larger than herself. The local police department, having finalized their internal review, announced a series of reforms aimed at preventing such incidents in the future. New training sessions on cultural sensitivity and community engagement were scheduled, and the findings of the investigation were made public in a bid to restore trust between law enforcement and residents. Despite the bureaucratic language of official statements, HOA saw in these efforts a glimmer of hope that actions were being taken to address systemic issues, not just isolated acts of bigotry. At home, HOA returned to the nurturing rhythm of her garden. The same delicate petals that had once drawn her into a moment of beauty now bore witness to her inner strength. Gardening was more than a hobby. It was a meditation, an ongoing reminder that even after a storm, nature always found a way to bloom again. With each new shoot that sprouted and every rose that unfurled its petals, HOA felt a quiet assurance that renewal was possible. In the serenity of her personal space, HOA also began to engage more with her neighbors, participating in community meetings and sharing her story, not to dwell on the pain, but to foster understanding. Conversations that once revolved solely around daily pleasantries shifted into discussions about dignity, respect, and the importance of standing together in the face of adversity. As the sun climbed higher, casting soft shadows across the manicured lawn, HOA allowed herself a rare moment of optimism. The incident with Karen, despite all its negative aspects, had set in motion a change, prompting both the community and the local authorities to confront deeply embedded prejudices. The transformation wasn't immediate or miraculous, but it was real. And in that reality, HOA saw an opportunity, a chance to help cultivate not only a garden of roses but also a community where kindness and respect were as natural as the morning light. In that reflective, calm after the storm, HOA resolved to continue nurturing both her garden and the spirit of unity around her, confident that even after the harshest winter, spring would eventually bloom. In the weeks that followed the tumultuous incident, a new rhythm began to take shape in the Maplewood Gardens community. HOA, ever resilient, immersed herself in the work that had defined her life, both in her cherished garden and in the broader efforts to cultivate a spirit of unity and understanding among neighbors. The ordeal with Karen had left its mark, but it also kindled a quiet determination to improve the community. Every morning, as the first light filtered through the trees and dew glistened on the carefully tended rose bushes, HOA found solace in the simple act of gardening. Tending to the soil became a metaphor for the work that needed to be done, nurturing new growth, pulling out weeds of prejudice, and ensuring that every bloom was given the opportunity to flourish. HOA's garden, once just a personal escape, had transformed into a living testament to the possibility of renewal after adversity. Word of the incident continued to circulate in hushed conversations and friendly nods exchanged at the local market. Neighbors who once felt isolated in their frustrations began approaching HOA, sharing their own experiences and expressing a desire for change. Community leaders, inspired by the clarity of HOA's recorded testimony and the solid evidence she had gathered, organized a series of informal town hall meetings. These meetings, held in community centers and even on quiet lawns, became platforms for open dialogue, a way for residents to air grievances, propose solutions, and commit collectively to a future free from the scourge of baseless hate. HOA found herself at the center of these initiatives. She was invited to speak about her experience, to explain how even a single individual's determination could spark change. In these gatherings, her soft-spoken yet resolute nature resonated with many. "It isn't about dwelling on what happened," she would say, "it's about taking control of our narrative and showing that respect is not negotiable." Every shared story, every nod of agreement, became a small step toward fostering an environment where prejudice could be openly challenged. Meanwhile, local law enforcement had followed through on their promise to enact reforms. The police department introduced new protocols and scheduled regular training sessions on cultural sensitivity and community relations. Although progress was gradual and sometimes imperceptible, the visible commitment to change inspired hope among residents. At home, HOA continued to maintain her garden with unwavering dedication. With each cut of the pruning shears and every careful watering of her roses, she felt a deep sense of purpose, one that went beyond mere horticulture. The garden became a symbol of resilience, echoing the sentiment that even after the harshest storms, beauty could again take root. Late one afternoon, as HOA worked quietly among the flower beds, a neighbor approached with a bouquet of freshly picked wildflowers, a silent thank you for the strength she had shown. In that tender moment, HOA realized that even small acts of kindness, when nurtured, could have a profound impact on the community at large. Though the memory of that fateful morning with Karen still lingered, it no longer defined HOA or the neighborhood. Instead, it had become a catalyst for dialogue, reform, and shared purpose. In the soft glow of a setting sun, as the garden swayed with the promise of tomorrow, HOA embraced the future with calm determination, confident that every bloom was a step toward healing old wounds and building a brighter, more inclusive tomorrow. As summer gave way to early autumn in Maplewood Gardens, the once turbulent events of that Sunday morning had slowly receded into the background, yet their impact continued to echo in subtle, transformative ways. For HOA, each day in her garden was now both a tribute to resilience and a promise of renewal. The lessons learned from the confrontation with Karen had fortified her resolve not just to nurture her roses, but also to actively contribute to a safer, more respectful community. HOA found herself participating more frequently in local initiatives, joining neighborhood watch groups and community outreach programs that sought to address underlying prejudices. Her experience had become a rallying point. A reminder that even in moments of acute confrontation, empathy and measured action could pave the way toward collective change. Neighbors, once hesitant to speak out against small injustices, now found the courage to stand together in solidarity. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves danced in the breeze and the garden began to show hints of seasonal transformation, HOA attended a public meeting organized by local community leaders. At this meeting, stories were shared, stories of hardship and of hope, and actionable plans were discussed. The police department, in collaboration with community representatives, had rolled out initiatives to improve transparency and responsiveness in conflict situations. HOA's measured testimony from that fateful day was cited as an example of how documentation and calm resolve could dismantle unfounded aggression. During the meeting, HOA addressed the gathered residents with quiet passion. "Our community's strength lies in our willingness to stand up for one another," she remarked. "What happened to me was not just a personal affront, it was a symptom of a larger problem. And by speaking out, we challenge that problem head-on." Her words resonated deeply, sparking applause and promising nods from those present. In the weeks that followed, neighborhood events took on a renewed sense of purpose. Residents organized cultural nights, open forums on diversity, and collaborative projects that bridged divides. Local businesses pledged to support community programs designed to combat discrimination and promote inclusivity. The garden, with its vibrant hues and steadfast blooms, became an informal gathering place where individuals from all walks of life could come together, share stories, and find common ground. HOA, back in her own yard, continued to tend to her roses with the same loving care that had always defined her morning ritual. With each new blossom and every carefully pruned branch, she saw the delicate interplay of nature's resilience and human spirit, a silent promise that no matter how deep the scars, healing was always possible. As dusk settled over Maplewood Gardens, HOA sat on her stone bench, reflecting on the long road behind her and the uncertain path ahead. The confrontation with Karen had been a painful disruption, but it had also ignited a spark of communal determination, a determination to build an environment where respect was given freely and every voice mattered. In that quiet moment, under a sky gradually shifting from orange to twilight blue, HOA allowed herself a quiet smile. The journey was far from over. Yet, with each sunrise, with every new day in the garden, there was hope, a hope that through continuous effort, compassion, and the shared strength of a united community, a brighter future could truly blossom for everyone in Maplewood Gardens.